Sometimes I can be a pest to watch movies with. I finally got to watch Project Hail Mary with my mum and my sister today. I worry that my constant pointing out how the film differs from the book may have annoyed them. Let's start with some facts. The movie is 2 hours and 36 minutes long. It's an Amazon MGM film directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller with a screenplay by Drew Goddard. According to trivia I read on IMDb, the original cut was 3 hours and 45 minutes. I want to get my hands on that original cut. Now, before I really start to tear apart the differences, I want to emphasize I loved this movie. It was visually stunning. The music was wonderful. I think Ryan Gosling played Grace really well. As someone who grew up with a borderline unhealthy obsession with all things space, this movie was perfect to rekindle my love of astronomy and space movies. If I separate it from what I know from the novel, it's a genuinely great film. The opening scene of the movie was very similar to the opening scene of the model, with Grace waking up to the computer, called Armando in this movie, asking him what 2 + 2 was. To avoid a higher maturity rating, we have Grace in a sort of plastic suit that all the cables and tubes are attached to, different from the book where he's completely nude. Similarly, he sees his deceased crewmates before he remembers his own name, but they're not the mummified corpses the book makes them out to be. The flashback sequences happened roughly in the same course as they did in the book, from Grace seeing his students to being the science specialist on the Hail Mary mission. In terms of timeline and chronology, however, Grace doesn't have the conversation with the kids about the impending ice age until after he meets Strat and names the astrophage, so I don't know in the movie who comes up with the name of astrophage. I understand in film and cinema it's difficult to adapt absolutely everything from a novel because of pacing, audience attention, but a lot of scenes and events seem to happen faster than they do in the book. Grace learned his name within moments of waking up instead of 2 flashbacks and a day later. He learns the mission quite fast. In general, the film's pacing makes the events seem like they happened over the course of a week instead of a few months like they do in the book. We didn't even get to see Grace psyching himself up for the 0G after he reached the Tau Ceti system. Speaking of, Grace has no space training in the movie? That's impossible. Sure, he doesn't remember what the ship is or where he is when he wakes up, but he knows how to put on the EVA suit, and he has a basic understanding of deceleration causing zero gravity. He had training of the EVA on base alongside the other astronauts, and he understands space because he's a science teacher who knows things. Why make him a complete astronautical novice when he isn't in the book? On the topic of astronautics, I don't know if it's a real word, some design differences that I noticed. Probably the most blatantly obvious is how different the design of the Hail Mary is to the diagram in the book. The layout of the ship and the design actually remind me more of the Apollo spacecraft or the International Space Station instead of the single cylinder with flared engines at the base. And the EVA suit was wrong too. The movie used a NASA suit instead of the Russian Orlan MKS-2 suit with the rear opening that is very specifically mentioned in the book to be faster for EVAs because there aren't as many parts to put on as a NASA suit. I'm sure eventually I'll stumble on the reason why that was the costumer's decision, but until then I'm quite upset about that. Grace's attitude toward Rocky is also not the same as in the book. In the book, he's curious, fascinated by Rocky, his interest in coming aboard the ship. In the movie, there's more caution and fear about meeting an alien, concern and annoyance at Rocky bringing his little ball on board to see everything, and in some way I see that it adds a little bit of a lighthearted tone to the movie, but the appeal of Grace to me was how calm he was about meeting another life form. I'd just like to know who decided to change Grace's attitude and why. Major events in the novel were replicated in the movie, with the exception of the ship shutting down and stranding them because the Tau Maeve are getting into the full fuel engines, and Rocky offering to build a new astrophage tank so Grace can go home. The explanation of why Rocky had so much astrophage was glossed over, as was the realization of how long Rocky had been orbiting Tau Ceti, and the conversation about evolution to explain why Grace and Rocky had the same level of intelligence. One change I really did like was the ending. Letting the audience see that the Beatles got back to Earth and Strat got the message on how to save the sun was something we don't see in the book. It's told to us by Rocky as he talks to an older Grace. Additionally, the biodome Grace has on Irid is nicer to look at than in the book, with its cliffs and the beach, compared to the vast emptiness that he has in writing. Rocky has his own exosuit that he uses to walk along the shore with Grace instead of talking behind a panel of xenonite separating Irid's atmosphere from Grace's, but we still have our wall for the classroom. I'd have liked to see the organ mentioned in the book, and the fact that Ryan Gosling was cast was perfect because he knows how to play a piano from his time filming La La Land. An organ isn't that different to a piano, so why didn't they let Ryan Gosling play one? Okay, I think I'm done pulling apart the movie now. Well, the Petrova line was more aesthetically pleasing than it should have been, mostly because it's hard to portray infrared light to a cinema audience, so it makes sense that it would be portrayed in visible light instead. And I never pictured the tunnel connecting the blip A to Hail Mary being so long or so dark, but I think I was thinking of the quarantine tunnels from E.T. I will reiterate, I adore this movie. I'm so glad it has a picture disc, because I'm getting tired of all of my DVDs just being a solid colored disc with silver writing. So thank you for giving me a lovely green-orange swirling cloud for my disc. I want to see the original cut of the movie, to see if scenes that I grumbled about being cut were even considered. I already want to watch this movie 20 more times. I managed to make a mini Grace and Rocky. Mini Grace to accompany my Rocky. Both are book accurate, not movie accurate. I'm very happy to see them on my bed every day now. Maybe sometime in the future I'll make a movie accurate Grace and Rocky, and maybe I'll film the process a little. But until then, I'm going to find any way I can to fill my wall with Project Hail Mary fan art, and I'm going to finish filling my page in my scrapbook with Rocky art for my third read of this book. I'm a little obsessed. So that was my comparison, as promised. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you next week for more of the Bendigo vlog. Okay, bye.